Today's guest is someone I have been sharing the stage with for the last 19 years. I personally met Ken sitting in on saxophone at an open mic blues jam at the Bourbon Street Bar in Colony about 19 years ago and have been part of the Nite Train band ever since. Ken Briggs has his roots in Poughkeepsie, New York. His grandfathers, Art Hankinson, grandfather on his mother's side, and Kenneth R. Briggs I on his father's side, ironically, both owned service stations in the Poughkeepsie area of New York. Ken's parents, Kenneth R. Briggs Jr., a New York State public education director, and Trudy Hankinson Briggs, one of the first female principals of New York State, were good friends of Pete Seeger and greatly supported the Clearwater organization that Pete represented. In another twist of fate, Thomasina Winslow's father, Thomas Winslow, for a time played in Pete Seeger's band. Thomasina has been bringing her songwriting, singing, and guitar talents to the Ken Briggs band, Nite Train, for the past 3 years, and has even written 2 songs on the Nite Train's latest release, Cat on a Mission. Ken Briggs started playing bass in Poughkeepsie, New York in the early 1980s with groups like The Band, Entity, and later Andy Follett and the Bluescasters. In the late 1980s, he then helped form 2 horn bands in and around Hartford, Connecticut with the Insight Jam Band and the Low Commotion Band. He moved to the 518 area and has performed in Anxiety, Divide by Zero, Holy Mackerel, Shameless, Party of 4, B4, and the Brown Sugar Blues Band and Blues Incorporated before forming Bluesosaurus in 2003, which morphed into the Nite Train Band. The core of the Nite Train Band since 2003 has been Ken Briggs, band leader, bass and vocals, his wife vocalist Marla Briggs, and myself, Marcus Benoit, on saxophone, keyboards and vocals. The band has been evolving quite a lot since 2003. In 2006, bassist bandleader Ken Briggs set out about the task of turning the band into its first rendition into a horn band. He added the high voltage horns, a crew of local brass and sax players that at one time or another included many talented local musicians from the Capital District. Nite Train's all-original first CD, Best Man, impressed critics and audiences throughout the Capital District. On the heels of that CD release, Nite Train added top-notch talent, including Paul Quigley on guitars, Al Cash on drums, Mike Kelly on keys and keyboards. Over the years, and more recently, Thomasina Winslow, guitar, vocals, and as a songwriter. The band opened the Rock to Rebuild show at the Palace Theater in 2005 after winning a contest to raise the most money in support of Hurricane Katrina victims in New Orleans. Ken Briggs was the linchpin for this effort, raising over $4,000 almost entirely by himself, which went to Habitat for Humanity, an organization he was part of at that time and helped build 4 tiny homes for New Orleans families whose homes were entirely underwater when the levees failed. Nite Train has regularly played in support of various charities for the past 19 years. Some highlight performances of Nite Train have been at the Captain J.P. Cruises with Commander Cody, Blues Fest 2000 and 2003 with John Primer, Fleet Blues Fest at the Empire State Plaza 2003-2004, the Schenectady Community College Blues Fest with Kim Simmons of Savoy Brown, the Skyloft with Toronzo Cannon, as well as numerous nightclubs, summer park gigs, the Capitol Summer Series, and live radio series at WRPI with both Steve Daub and Sonny Speed. Nite Train recorded the LP Best Man with the high voltage horns in July of 2007, and more recently the CD Cat on a Mission in February of 2020. For our first listening today, we'll be hearing Junkyard Dog from Nite Train Band's LP Best Man, followed by Cat on a Mission from Nite Train with Thomasina Winslow's recent release of the same name. Ken Briggs, I understand you have a great gig coming up at Cafe Lena's. Could you tell us a little bit about how we could see that, one way or the other.
Yes, thanks, Marcus. I'm really excited to play at Cafe Lena, where Bob Dylan and Don McLean and even the Winslow entire family with Thomasina as a 5-year-old performed for years and years. We are going to be performing at Cafe Lena, 47 Phila Street in Saratoga Springs, New York. Your options are Eventbrite. You can show up in person after you buy your tickets there. The tickets are, for the public, $20 in advance, $23 at the door. Their members are $18 in advance, $21 at the door. Students, it's $10 in advance. Student rush is $5 at the door. And anyone that just wants to see it from the comfort of their own home can see it on Cafe Lena TV. You'll provide the link, CAFFELENA.TV. And that you'll look up Nite Train with Thomasina Winslow and see where we're playing. For only $5, you can catch the whole performance. And I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, wonderful. Nite Train with Thomasina Winslow at Cafe Lena on March 6th. Please follow the screen.
Junkyard dog, Lord knows you got to throw me a bone. I'm your junkyard dog, Lord knows you got to throw me a bone. If you don't satisfy my hunger, I'll be sure to chase you on home. You see, I don't have many wants on this 20-foot chain lead. When I come a barking, baby, better give me what I need. I'm your junkyard dog, Lord knows you got to throw me a bone. If you don't satisfy my hunger, I'll be sure to chase you on home. Chase you on home, Marty. Basic instinct, give me some food and love. Ignore my howls long enough, but baby, push just comes to shove. I'm your junkyard dog, Lord knows you got to throw me a bone. If you don't satisfy my hunger, I'll be sure to chase you on home. this doghouse, outdoors in the cold. Better treat me right now, woman, or I just lose all control. I'm your junkyard dog. Lord knows you got to throw me a bone. If it don't satisfy my hunger, I'll be sure to chase you on home. Come on, boys. Uninvited, and I catch you set downwind. You better bring food to distractions, or you better just be thick-skinned. I'm your junkyard dog. Lord knows you got to throw me a bone. If you don't satisfy my hunger, I'll be sure to chase you all home. I'm your junkyard dog, baby.
This next song's about my blind cat, and he's not just a regular cat. He's memorized where all the furniture is in the house, and he's the coolest cat. So this one's going out to you, Alexi. This is called Cat on a Mission.
Ken Briggs, great to have you tonight on Empire Radio Sounds. I appreciate you sharing your music and story with us. Could you give us a little background on how Nite Train got started and just a little background on that whole story there?
Yeah, it's interesting because I just recently reviewed something from what used to be our history page, and Steve the Jam Man Katz, was very instrumental in introducing me to a couple of players, and you were one of them.
Yeah.
And there were the Bourbon Street jams back on Central Ave in Albany, right near where Schenectady and Albany meet, and you may recall some of that. So he introduced me to, and I don't know if you remember, but Dave Gropka on drums. And he said, hey, there's a guy that lives right in Altamont near you. And I had forgotten that it was Dave was one of the first drummers, but there was another drummer as well. But Dave was one of the ones who introduced me to Dean Kreplin and to Fred Brown Shuggy Blues.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, it's tough times right now because I just found out yesterday that Fred Goodrum Brown Shuggy passed away on November 15th, 2021. So sad stuff. I had no idea, and it was weird. I was looking up to try to get some pictures, Googling his name, and up came his obituary. So I had no idea. Tough stuff, Marcus. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we've lost a lot of them. I do remember the Bourbon Street thing, and I said up front before we got to this interview that I personally have been with the band from the beginning. But it was a one-night sit-in at a jam, as you mentioned, at Bourbon Street, and here I am 18 years later, and it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. I agree. It's been a lot of fun, and as you might recall, we started you off with saxophone, and then we had you double duties and do some keyboards and sax and vocals and what have you. What was sad is, I just saw the picture that I had of the old Brown Shuggy Blues Band, which came soon after what I'm discussing with you. This stuff was some of this was a few years before we had met, but I was playing with Brown Shuggy and those guys, and sadly Josh Bloomfield is no longer with us, our drummer, and Brown Shuggy Blues, and Steve Katz, the jam man himself, is no longer here. So there's three folks that are not here. It certainly makes you think of your mortality.
Well, you know what? We're carrying the torch forward, and I'm sure they'd all go for that.
That's what we're doing. We're rocking and bluesing our way forward, and with new songs and new neat stuff. But anyway, I remember you'll laugh. We're going to call the band Boot the Owl because Dave Gropka came over to Dean Kreplin's house, and his wife had a ceramic owl sitting there. And he was bringing in, Grapka was bringing in his big bass drum, and it was in front of him, so he didn't see what was on the floor. He kicked that darn owl right across the room.
First blues.
It was almost Boot the Owl was the name of that band.
Well, that might not have been bad, but I do like Nite Train. I got to tell you, I remember we went through a lot of names before we came to that one, and I think it fits the band in my experience.
Right. Because one of the things we had was Bluesasaurus, and that was ironically that traces back to Brown Shuggy too, because he was saying, "Oh, the band ought to be Briggsasaurus because the way you come out on stage, you've got that strong personality. You come right out and you're rocking them and blah blah blah." He goes, "It ought to be Briggsasaurus," and I said, "But it's not about me. It's about the players in the band. It's all the players in the band because that's the way I see it." And I said, "So how about Bluesasaurus?" So we had that initially, but then Marcus, as you said, we thought about it and said, you know what, we're going to be like the party train, get on board, the Nite Train. That's when we came up with Nite Train. I think that's the one that really stuck, and we liked it.
Yeah, well, there's a long history of Nite Train and blues in a lot of different contexts. Let me ask you about the CD, Best Man. Tell me a little bit about your inspiration for the songs on that. And at the beginning of the show, when I was doing a little history on the Nite Train, a lot of the songs from that particular CD you'll hear them in the background, not the ones we're featuring tonight, because I want to get as much of that CD out there. So tell me about the inspiration, why you decided to use a horn section, all that stuff.
Yeah, it was weird because I was thinking about what it was. I had a monkey on my back to get some sort of CD recorded.
Right.
We had several demos, a lot of them being just cover music and whatever that we were passing out the bars. But I'm thinking, we really need some original tunes. And I had been writing speeches and different stuff for Toastmasters and some other stuff I was involved in. But I also said, I got some creative ideas for tunes here. And one of them was Best Man, which we ended up titling the CD after. And the Best Man was truly something where my wife and I, when she went away to college, she was dating a couple of different people and trying to make sure that I was the right one. And I was thinking, hey, you know what? I'm kind of convinced that you're the right one for me. I don't need any more convincing. But she wanted to sort of date and just make sure that she was getting the right person. So Best Man was me kind of saying, listen, you've tried all the rest. Now come back to the best. And that was kind of my Best Man. And it had that cool, funky bass, which I loved. And I said, you know what, this is going to stick. And sure enough, we actually called the album Best Man because it was such a funky bass and cool tune. And that you might recall too, we ended up, that soon afterwards to tour for that CD, we ended up meeting Paul Quigley, bringing him on board, Paul Borello, and we had a lot of fun. So there was a lot of fun in recording that.
And how about the horn players? Tell us about how.
Yeah, so you I think you've heard some of this, but when I was, it's funny because I originally started in Poughkeepsie with a band called The Band, and it wasn't the band that everybody knows as the band. We just called it the band because we didn't have a name. But we had Frank Perry on guitar and Marco LeBoy on drums and myself on bass, and that was my first band. Then following up with that, Andy Follett, right in my college years there, right around 83, 84, we started playing with Andy Follett. And he had Andy Follett and the Bluescasters, and that was Andy, me, and Marco LeBoy, the same drummer. And boy, we had a great time playing out, and that was fun. And Andy really taught me the blues. He really brought me into the blues, got me into it. Okay, but then I moved to Connecticut, and sure enough, the very first thing I did was meet with a group of horn players. Okay. And it was the Insight Jam Band is what we called ourselves. And then later we became Low Commotion, which they later turned into a really big wedding band and large event corporate band that they called Locomotion, like, come on, baby, do the locomotion. But I liked our Low Commotion sort of play on words. I liked that a little better. But I was in a horn band in Connecticut called Locomotion. And sure enough, I was so happy to see them. I think a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I saw them at Foxwoods in Connecticut, and they're still playing the scene. They're a big band, playing corporate functions, playing casinos, and it's the real deal. And it's pretty much the same horn section that I had performed with. And I was mostly playing bass on those. We had a singer. We had two pretty much dedicated singers, but I sang a couple of tunes. But it wasn't until I got into the Nite Train that I started, for a little while there, I was like the main vocalist. But then we started switching it up, and we brought you in, Marcus, and we had, different Marla players. Ricky Serrano, my wife Marla came in, Marla Briggs, and we brought in Ricky Serrano and had some fun with it. And we've had many vocalists over the years, but I started with that horn section. So I was very familiar. I mean, we used to play a whole bunch of Chicago, really cool, beginnings, a lot of really cool old tunes. I really wonder what time it was and all the fun Chicago stuff. Anyway, so I had that horn section in my mind. Well, then I meet you, and you knew a ton of horn players.
I do.
And we said, and that you knew. And we said, you know what? This is before the crazy downturn in the economy of 2009. So this was like 2006, 2007. People were ready to hire big bands. They didn't mind having. So we said, you know what? Let's try this out. and we pulled in some really cool horn players, and we could go right down the list. But everybody from Bill Leary to Sean Bazilowitz and Freddie Young on trumpet, and you on sax, and
Bones Malone.
And John Savage playing some killer saxophone as well. And
that brings me to the next question, because I know from watching it, it seems like there's been a cast of hundreds of players come through the band at one time or another, because it's hard to keep the same people in the band all the time. It's about money, right? And you can't have players sitting around by the phone. They're going to be out gigging. So what do you look for when you need a substitute musician for any given chair? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think, it's like anything else. When you're the band leader, then you need to staff gigs, and you'll get a call and you realize, oh, shucks, my main players are on vacation, or somebody's got a competing. I mean, our players are so good that they might actually be doing a college performance, or they might actually be, having students give them present them with final assignments or what have you. So it's pretty serious. So we're looking. We always need to lean on people. We are lucky to have several friends who are Berklee School of Music graduates, or real people. I mean, I joke, but Mike Tremonti on guitar, for example, Berklee School of Music. Rocky Petroselli, he has his own Rocky's Music studio. Used to play with Ernie Williams. I mean, to have players like that as your back pocket. Mark Foster, fantastic player, Albany Symphony Orchestra. So we have real talent that we can draw upon when we need to. And those other players, we've had Johnny Savage sit in, everybody, Keith Prey, a whole bunch of people come sit in with us who are very talented local musicians. And we've been blessed because we've tried these folks out in various capacities, and they're asking for gigs. So it's good. When we're stuck, we go, hey, well, you know what? We need you. Come on in.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's been a blessing in a lot of ways, because, like you say, sometimes we got family vacations and stuff, and we have responsibilities, and you've been very flexible. I can tell you that as a band leader, it's much appreciated for us that come and go. Although I'm here more than not, try to be. Let me get on to the next part of this interview, though. I would like to ask you, bring us up to speed on how Thomasina Winslow became part of our operation at this point, the Nite Train Band.
Yeah, so Thomasina was at Al Cash's 70th birthday party, which was awesome. And it's funny, I had heard of her, and a lot of people told me, oh yeah, she's great, and she lives right in New Baltimore, so she's not far away from you. And I had heard about her family and stuff like that, so I thought it was kind of neat. And at the birthday party, she got to sing, and she sang a couple numbers, and I was impressed with what she was doing. And then she started asking me a lot of questions, and she said, now I heard that you've had your daughters sing in the Nite Train. And I said, yes, both Amy and Lily have sang in the Nite Train in the past. And she was very drawn to that, because she, and I didn't know this at the time, but since she was 5 years old, her mom and dad have been touring as the Winslows, and would bring her into Cafe Lena, 5, 6, 7 years old. She's playing guitar, singing with her family. So, there was a lot of, there were a lot of parallels there. Yeah. Also, it was weird because I mentioned to her, I said, gee, my parents were friends with Pete Seeger and his wife, Toshi. And of course, her dad used to sing with Pete Seeger. So he actually wrote the original Clearwater song, Looky Yonder Clearwater. So there was a lot of connection there. And to the point where when my mom passed, I got a call at work, and it was Pete Seeger on the line. And I got to tell you, Marcus, my jaw dropped. I'm like, Pete Seeger's calling me. And it's because my mom was known as Permission Slip Briggs, and she was a teacher, fourth grade. And she would get all the kids to sign all the permission slips from their parents to go on the Clearwater boat.
Oh,
and
okay.
sing with Pete Seeger. And Pete
Nice.
would get
Nice.
them singing and playing with his
Nice.
banjo and the whole bit, to the point where he said, when my mom passed, he said, I'd like to perform at her service, at her memorial service.
Yeah.
And we actually had a memorial service on the Clearwater ship in Poughkeepsie at Warriors Park.
I see.
And unfortunately, Pete could not make it because he had a family function at San Francisco that very same weekend, which was sad, but what are you going to do? But it actually was better in some ways, because then the event was about my mom, not about Pete Seeger being there or whatever. And
Yeah.
my good friend Al Bailey sang 3 Pete Seeger tunes that Pete gave to us. This Old Brown Earth, and a couple other tunes, but This Old Brown Earth is awesome. It's basically ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It all comes back to brown earth. And it was a great tune. And that's where Thomasina is like, we got a lot in common here, don't we?
Yeah.
And I agreed with her. And she said, would you mind if I sat in on, a couple sessions? So we had her at the Round Lake Auditorium.
Oh, yeah, I
and
remember
she
that.
sat in on a few sessions. That was our very first gig with
Yeah.
her. And then I'll tell you what, we ended up touring the whole summer with her,
Yeah.
not knowing that this crazy COVID thing was coming, but she
Right.
sang on almost every gig. I'm pretty sure it might have been one missing, but most of the gigs. So sure enough, it was fun that we had we kind of connected and had her join us, and we added her moniker to the CD because we wanted to stand out. As crazy as it is, there's a bunch of Nite Trains out there. I just found this out too. There's another one, country band in Cleveland, Ohio. I got to talk to some.
I was just there. I didn't see him though.
I got to tell them cease and desist. That's my name.
Yeah.
Ironically, there's another Freddie Goodrum tale that I can tell you, that we used to call ourselves Blues Incorporated, and I got a letter from Blues Incorporated from England saying cease and desist using our name, and it was Freddie Goodrum, and I came up with that, kind of joking around like we were going to show up in leisure suits or suits with a briefcase and under one arm and a guitar case in the other, and kind of show up the gigs that way.
Right.
And joking about Blues Inc. And those guys said cease and desist. And it turns out, I'm trying to remember, I think it's Bill Wyman was in the original Blues Incorporated. So one of the Stones was, so they're serious. Their lawyers are serious.
Yeah, I don't think you might have been in trouble trying to match up against Bill Wyman's lawyers, I would think.
Yeah, I think I didn't have enough money to fight him off.
So leading up
so we kept ourselves. What I thought too is Thomasina wrote 2 of the songs on our latest CD, Cat on a Mission.
Yeah.
And so it was some odd percentage. It was like 29% of the tunes were written by her. Figured, what, let's give her the nod. And then it also distinguishes us as Nite Train with Thomasina Winslow.
Yeah.
We're unique. If you do a lookup, iTunes or Amazon Music or what have you, we're unique that way. So.
Well, she's a real serious addition to the band. It's a real pleasure to work with. A wonderful lady, very talented, and I've totally dug having her on board.
I couldn't agree more, and I love that Marla was comfortable in bringing her on. I had to, of course, ask my wife if it's okay to have another female singer.
Well, you like to live on the wild side. What can I tell you?
I was living on the wild side, and I was happy that Marla said, "Oh, I love Thomasina, bring her in." And it also made me feel that she was comfortable in what she could do as well. And she was going to stand, and it would be fun. And to tell you the truth, it's wonderful when they sing together. Yeah. Man, it brings a really unique sound to us. And I love the vocals, and I'd like to explore use of more vocals in Nite Train with Thomasina.
Well, you got 2 classy ladies there, so you lucked out. Could have not been that way, but you did.
Yes, well. And they're both really talented, and their voices are different. They each have their unique, but it sounds great together too.
That,
yeah. There's a synergy when they sing together.
So let me ask you this: in terms of writing music, I know the whole backstory of how Lexi, your cat, is an adopted blind cat from the Middle East that your daughter took in, and that's a great story in itself, absolutely. But then it occurred to me, there's this other backstory going on here. And it is Ken Briggs is on a cat on a mission himself in blues and rock music. So I'm going to read it right off the paper here because I had to think about this for a while. What would you say in terms of contributing music and keeping a band working? Do you think your mission is? In other words, what motivates you to do all the booking the band, promoting the band, creating and updating the website, and all the stuff it takes to keep a band in operation. It's a big question, but so that's why I had to read it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I had a coworker ask me recently, and he said, gee, he goes, you don't think that Nite Train is ever really going to go somewhere, do you? And I thought,
we're still here.
That's an interesting question from somebody, seeing that I've run the band for 18 years.
Right.
And we played the Palace Theater and Empire State Plaza 4 times and Altamont Fair 3 times and, all these other big events and blues festivals. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I actually do think that the Nite Train's got a shot. We just have to get heard by the right person. And it'll start sounding like a Boston song where some guys got, the big cigars and company contracts and whatever else shows up at the right gig. But I joke about it. But this year we performed twice at Saratoga Racecourse. Let's face it, you never know who's going to be there. Coach Parcells is the coach of the former coach of the Giants. He shows up. Who knows who's going to show up? But it might be. I mean, there's celebrities that are there. So I was secretly kind of hoping that we might get found someday. And you never know. We're working on gigs right now that are upper shelf and hoping that those lead to other upper shelf gigs. So yeah, that's part of the motivation is that I think the players we have, I have a lot of confidence in. They're great players. So to get them in front of the right audience, I think is wonderful. And sure enough, we do a bunch of local gigs as well. So it not every gig is going to be a top shelf gig. Right. But that being said, tell you what, we've had a lot of fans that we brought on who follow us around and sing with us and sure. Dance at our events.
Sure.
And I'm thinking that, we met them at some of these smaller clubs too. So I don't poo-poo the smaller clubs, but I am still pursuing the bigger gigs. I'm always looking for, other places for us to play. And it's worth the calls and knocking on doors and trying to get us heard by other people. I'm always pushing that, including the press release for this latest CD that's out on our website, www.nitetrainband.com, NITETRAINBAND.com. So because that synthesizes, and it actually mentions some of what's behind the lyrics to the 7 songs that appear on the CD. Right. And it's funny you mentioned Alexi because he is an interesting story. I couldn't sleep at night because I'm Facebook friends with Jumana Tag, and she's the woman who lived in Jordan, who found this poor kitty with no eyes. Right. The poor guy had infected eyes. So she brought him to a vet, had the eyes, they were sewn shut just to protect him so that he didn't get further infections. And sure enough, blind kitty cat. And she goes, what am I going to do with him? She had friends in New York City. I asked her, I said, you got to tell me, because I romanticized it in my song, that he's put into a beat up old crate. And I almost envisioned it being on the waves of some boat, going across the ocean from Jordan or something, along with import and exports or something. And she said, no. She goes, I paid $500 and I stuffed him into the crate. And she said, after a month of basically nursing him back to health, she said, I was putting him in the crate and he knew something wasn't right. So he hugged her. He put his arms and he hugged her and didn't want to let her go. And she said, I came this close to not putting him in the crate. And and her friend was with her and said, we got 7 dogs we just saved. They don't like the blind cat. Yeah. They really can't stand the cat. And he's blind, so he's going to be trying to scratch him. And she goes, put him in there and we're going to pray for him and think good thoughts. She said, I put him in there, had him mailed to JFK on a plane for $500. She goes, my friends in New York City own a shelter. They could not find a home for him in New York City. So those guys in the shelter in New York sent him to Hudson, New York, where my daughter saw him. Lily Briggs saw him and said, Dad, I want to adopt a blind kitty. And I said, honey, I was trying to talk her out of it. I'm not going to lie. I was like, this could be real big problems. A poor guy right out of the gate, he's got problems. And she said, Dad, if we don't love him, who's going to love him? And I said, he's in, and now he's got his own song and the whole CD is named after him.
Well,
He's a cat of the
that cat's
but
done well
Jumana,
designing my lives.
Jumana, the woman that saved him, said to me, she said, whoever, I asked the shelters, whoever adopts him, if you don't mind, see if they mind being Facebook friends with me. She said, the second I saw your family playing with him and having fun with him and him, smiling and having a blast in your home, she said, I knew I made the right choice stuffing him in that crate and sending him to New York.
Oh yeah, everybody loves a happy ending, and that's
Isn't
a good
that
happy
awesome?
ending. It sure is.
And she told me, you know what? If I mailed them today, it would have been $2,500 to $3,000.
Yeah, right.
With all the snafus and all these crazy container ships and all the problems.
So I got just a couple more questions for you. First of all, well, let me start with. I see you're wearing your gas station shirt, and I notice over the years you often wear the Phillips 66, I think a Route 66 shirt when we're gigging out. And then when I saw pictures you posted at one point of your grandfather, I realized this whole connection between your stage presence and your roots, as it were. So tell us a little bit about that backstory there, if you would.
Yeah, it's funny because we have occasionally played the song Route 66. So I purchased that Route 66 shirt, but I agree with you that it made you think of the Phillips 66, which was the old gas stations. Both of my grandparents, my mother's father and my dad's dad, and he was Kenneth the first, and my dad was Kenneth technically the second, and then I'm Kenneth the third. But my dad's father owned the Gulf station on Main Street in Poughkeepsie for a long time. I'm 25, 30 years, something like that. And it was right across from the old Howard Johnson's that everybody remembers. And people said, oh, and I remember stopping in at your father's gas station and blah, 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 or, to my dad. So my grandfather. But people love that old gas station. And sure enough, that's why you've seen some of the pictures I have I have the Gulf station patches on some of my shirts as well.
Right.
And that was Gulf. Then my grandfather on my mother's side had a mobile station. They had the Pegasus, but his was also an Esso. He also had the Esso for a little while. So I've got some of these patches, and it's to honor my grandparents that you both used to have stations. And I got a million stories from those old. I guess they were technically at one point. They
That's
were
kind of
both
funny,
Isn't it funny? It really is. And it's funny because my grandmother tells me a story where my grandfather on my mother's side was creating arms in the old IBM. This is during World War II. He was in the old IBM building helping make bombs and whatever they were making, military equipment. And so my grandmother was running the gas station, and she said we had 3 Doberman pinchers. So she had 3 Doberman pinchers in behind the counter with her. Some guys came in with guns to try to rob the place. And she said those Dobies came over the counter so fast. Those guys went running, and that was the end of it. She snafu'd them with dogs. So
sounds like another song in the making, which leads
another
me right,
song. Exactly.
It leads me right to my next question, actually, and that is,
good.
What do you have any plans for new music up the road for Nite Train? What's your next mission, as it were?
Yeah, you've noticed that there's a theme with animals. Our family just loves animals. There's something about it. I do have a new song that I'm working on called Red-Tailed Blues.
Okay.
And that's about a red-tailed hawk. Mm-hmm. And I'm dying to introduce it to you because I think I hear some killer saxophone coming out of you.
I look forward to it. Doesn't take much to get me to blow some saxophone.
Right. And it sounds crazy, but songs that I write about animals really do touch the audiences. Junkyard Dog was about Midnight Chance, my first black lab, my first dog ever, who we had for 14 years. And we dedicated Cat on a Mission to him in the middle of the CD. It was nice. Everybody let me put my little tribute to him because we lost him during COVID after 14 years. And boy, that was real tough. I'm not going to lie. So I was glad that we were able to do that. But that he's the one I wrote Junkyard Dog about. And everybody goes, but my daughter said to me, my youngest, Lily, said, Dad, we don't have a junkyard. I go, honey, see these trailers in our yard? The neighbors think this is a junkyard. And Midnight is the one who presides over this junkyard. So he's the Junkyard Dog. I said, give Daddy a little artistic license. We're writing songs here. He's a junkyard dog.
We're not just messing around, right?
Right. So that's how we brought the Junkyard Dog. Now we got Cat on a Mission. Who knows? This next CD, maybe it's going to be Red-Tailed Blues.
Well, okay. Well, listen, Ken Briggs, I want to thank you so very much for giving up your time to do this interview and letting us play 2 of your songs on my little pet project, Empire Radio Sounds. And as a friend and musician and brother, I'm going to tell you, I've had a ball these 18 years blowing saxophone, singing, well, I say that loosely, and playing some keyboards and so forth. And it's just been a lot of fun, and I'm ready for the next 18. So we'll rock on and keep playing the blues, man.
You've been fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to your series here. This sounds like a real neat enterprise you got going on, and I wish you all the success you can with this. And I'm looking forward to us more fun with Nite Train with Thomasina Winslow. I'm looking forward to the next chapter and the Red Tail Blues.
All right. Well, thanks again, and be well.
Thank you.